Hello and welcome to CIS115. A lot of people will probably want to do the labs, write the web pages and such at home. You won't be able to submit them from home to the server for grading, but you will be able to write them either at home or on your personal laptop or something like that. And in order to do that, you're going to need the right software. So I wanted to kind of give you a little demonstration real quick as to where to go to get the software, what the software you're going to need. Every bit of it's free. Everything that I use in class is going to be free software. You can just go out and download it. So I'm going to do first the Windows and then second the Mac, depending on which operating system you have. Here you can see I have a Windows 7 virtual machine running inside of my Mac, and basically what I did was I went to Google. And I know that I'm going to need two pieces of software. One piece of software to actually write the code itself, to write the HTML, to write the CSS and the JavaScript and so forth. For that, I'm going to be using Programmer's Notepad. So I went to Google, I did a search for Programmer's Notepad. You can see it here. It is different than just standard WordPad or Notepad. You can use those and they work fine, but Programmer's Notepad, as you can see from the picture here, it color codes. You get to choose the language that you're programming in, so it's going to make it a lot easier. It'll color code, it'll give you line numbers and so forth. So I went here, downloaded the software, and this is what I got. So to do the installation, basically I'm just going to go through and do a standard installation. Walk through the little steps here, pretty much choosing the default for everything. And that's it. I'm finished. Once I've downloaded and installed the software, I can get rid of the download file. And here we have Programmer's Notepad. As I said, you can tell it's going to be different from Notepad and WordPad because once you open it, you do get to choose the language that you're writing your code in. So for example, if I choose HTML, you'll notice how it automatically color codes and auto completes a lot of the standard HTML tags that we're going to be using. So for example, if I choose to write the title, this is a test, then maybe add a body to that. Here we have a standard typical HTML page. I can see the name of the file. Right now there's a star, an asterisk there, so I know I haven't saved the file, but it is written in HTML. It's color coded. If I so choose, I can zoom in, make it a little bit easier to read. One of the features that I love is the fact that I can turn on the line numbers. So for example, if we're all writing the same page in class, I can direct everyone's attention to line 5 or line 2, and everybody will know exactly what I'm talking about. Down here at the bottom, I get a little bit of information about the file, nothing really major. So I'm going to save this file, and I'm going to save it to my desktop, and I'll save it as testpage.html. Now, if I were just writing HTML or CSS or JavaScript, this software and a browser is literally all that I need. You can see here's my page. I double click it. Internet Explorer opens, and there's my page. It works out pretty nice. The only thing is there are going to be times in class this semester when we need something other than just CSS, just HTML, just JavaScript. There are going to be times when we need to write software in PHP. PHP by its nature is a programming language designed for the web that requires a web server. By that, what I mean, the PHP code has to be rendered by a web server running PHP engine and turned into HTML. So if I were to write a PHP page, save it on my desktop, and double click it like I just did the HTML file, it won't work. It has to be processed by a web server. So most of you probably don't have a web server lying around somewhere, don't want to spend the money to get one. So what we do is we download a piece of software called WAMP. WAMP stands for Windows, Apache, MySQL, and PHP. Apache is a Linux-based, open source, and free web server software. It's probably the most popular web server package in the world. MySQL is a database language that uses the SQL language. The MySQL database will be used later on in our class when we start writing PHP that integrates, sends data to, takes data from a MySQL database. And then obviously the P is for PHP. Downloaded that. To get that, I'll go to Google. Actually, probably better off. I've had some mixed issues with Windows 7. Sometimes the new versions of WAMP don't work very well with Windows 7. So what I would suggest is go to samsoncctech.info. That's our page. Click on Software. And down towards the bottom, you'll see a link for WAMP 5 1.7.3. It's about a 20 meg file. Download that. Once you get it downloaded, this is what you're going to have. So I'm going to install that. The installation process is pretty simple. It does ask you a few questions that I want to call your attention to. But for the most part, it's going to be a pretty straightforward installation process. The CWAMP folder already exists. Would you like to install it in that folder anyway? I already had it on here, so I'm going to get that message. If you didn't, you wouldn't get that. But anyways, if you do, just choose yes. Now, automatically start WAMP server on startup. Again, do you want it to automatically start? If you're going to use it a lot, yes, you do. In our case, I'm not going to use it very often, so I'm not going to check it. Let it run through the installation process. It only takes just a few minutes. So as of right now, with Programmer's Notepad, you're able to do about half of the class: HTML, CSS, JavaScript, that and a browser. Now this virtual machine only has Internet Explorer. I haven't installed any of the others. My preferences are Google Chrome and Mozilla Firefox. If I were going to install this on my home computer, I would make sure that I had one of those two browsers. Internet Explorer is okay, but it's just not that great. So you're going to need Programmer's Notepad in order to do the HTML, the JavaScript, and the CSS, which again is about half the class. In order to do the PHP, the MySQL stuff that's towards the latter part of class, you are going to need WAMP. And if you're going to be writing software on your home computer or your personal computer, it's going to be a requirement. During the installation process, it's going to ask us for the folder that serves as document root. This is the folder where, by default, any page that you write, any web page that you write, must be put into this folder for WAMP to recognize it. So by default, you'll notice as we scroll down a little ways, it automatically defaults to a www folder. The defaults are fine. I would recommend the defaults. So I'm going to click OK there. Call my computer localhost, email address, which doesn't matter. Now it's going to ask, what is your default browser? Since I only have Internet Explorer installed, it automatically found explorer.exe. If you have Firefox and would like to use it as your default, simply find C, Windows. You would find a Mozilla folder in here. Open it, and then there's a link inside called firefox.exe. Same thing with Chrome. You would find a Chrome folder, chrome.exe. But since I only have Internet Explorer, that's what I'm going to use. Would you like to install the WAMP 5 homepage? Sure, that's fine. And the installation process complete. Now, Apache is a web server, which means that technically it would give your computer, people on the outside of your computer, access to your computer. Do we want to allow it access? Well, I'm going to allow it, but I'm going to be very careful later on to only use it when I need it. So, okay, that's finished. Now, again, once I've installed it, I can delete the file, the installation file, and you're going to notice that there's nothing down here. Well, remember, we didn't tell WAMP to automatically start. So every time I want to use WAMP, I'm going to need to go to Start, Programs, find WAMP Server, and Start WAMP Server. Now you'll notice you get this extra little icon down here in your notification area. Looks like an igloo. When I click on it, I get this extra menu that I'm not accustomed to seeing. Now, as of right now, I can see that there are quite a few options in here. Localhost is basically WAMP's version of itself. Whenever I open localhost, it's going to open Internet Explorer, and here is the default home page for my WAMP server. I know I'm not going out to the internet because it says localhost. This is actually a web page that is being pulled off of my computer through the WAMP server right now. PHP My Admin is a MySQL database administration tool. We'll use that a little later on. The big one for us right now is this www directory. Let me minimize that so I can get that out of the way. Remember, I told you that there's only one folder on your machine that WAMP automatically looks to find web pages. And for us, it's going to be this www directory. So when I open that, here's the folder. By default, any file called index.html, index.php, default.html, default.php, those are going to be the files that are going to be opened first automatically. So, for example, a while ago when you saw me open localhost, the file that you see right here, this file, is actually called index.php. It is this file. So if I'm going to rename this file, just so I don't see that default, I'm going to rename this file to old index. And now you'll notice when I refresh this page, I get a listing of all the files that are in that folder. That's what I want. So now any web pages that I create, be they HTML or PHP, I can create them, drag and drop them into my www folder, and then to test and see what they would look like, I open up my local host and click on the file name, and there's that page. So that's pretty simple. That's how we would use WAMP, at least for right now. Later on, when we start writing PHP pages, we'll get into how you would use the PHPMyAdmin, the MySQL stuff. We'll get into that a little bit later on. Once you're finished using WAMP, you're done with your session, you can come in here and stop all services. That'll basically turn WAMP off. You'll notice it turns red. That means that if you try to open localhost now, you're going to get nothing. The web server is not running, therefore it cannot provide you with the web pages that your browser is asking for. So that's how you do that. It's pretty straightforward, pretty simple, not a lot of issues there. All the software is free. The WAMP server, the older version of the WAMP server, the one that's on samsoncctech.info, seems to work better with Windows 7. Programmer's Notepad is pretty good. I use a couple of other ones, but Programmer's Notepad is probably my favorite. So if you're a Windows user and you want to write software on your personal laptop, or you want to write software on your home computer, those are going to be the two minimum pieces of software that you're going to need. Now, if you're a Mac user, there's a couple of other pieces that you may need as well. You need something to serve as a notepad, a programmer's notepad, and there are tons and tons and tons of options. The one that I use is right here, Text Wrangler. Again, it's free. You can go to Google and download Text Wrangler. It gives you that same look that Programmer's Notepad gives you, where everything is color-coded. You can actually have it show the line numbers and so forth, but for the most part, being color-coded is going to be quite useful. So here's a page that I've written for another website, and you can see how nice and neat it makes everything look. So for a Mac, I do recommend Text Wrangler. There are other ones. Aptana Studio is pretty good. I think there's one called Bluefish or something like that that works pretty good. JEdit works okay. But for simplicity, to just write a simple web page, you're going to find that Text Wrangler is going to be more than enough to meet your needs. Now, for the WAMP, well, if WAMP stands for Windows, Apache, MySQL, and PHP, it only makes sense that MAMP stands for Macintosh, Apache, MySQL, and PHP. Again, you can download this. There's two versions. There's a Pro version that you have to pay for. We don't want that. You can download just plain MAMP. Whenever you download that, let's see, it's here. It's going to give you this little icon here. You basically click that icon, gives you this window, start the servers, and now I can open my start page. And you can see in my particular case, it's using Chrome as my default browser, which is fine. And here you can see a listing of the files that live in my www directory. Just like with WAMP, you do have access to PHPMyAdmin, so that's going to be quite helpful. But just like with MAMP, you have to know where the default folder for all web pages is. So with MAMP, you can go into your preferences and you can look around through there and look at port numbers and Apache information. This is the one that counts. the document root. And you'll notice in my particular machine, it's Applications, MAP, htdocs. That's a huge folder. That's very, very important. Any web page that I write on this machine, if I want to test it with MAP, then I'm going to have to put it inside of that folder. So I'll go to Applications, MAP, and there you can see htdocs. Basically, I separate everything that I create into folders. Pretty simple to get to. I can drag and drop folders from the desktop into here. To keep me from having to go through all of this extra work to get to this folder, I actually created a shortcut on my desktop. It's pretty simple to do this. You can open your Finder. Oops, wrong button. Go to your Applications. Go to your MAP folder. And find your htdocs. Right-click. Make alias, which is basically a shortcut, and then drag and drop that to your